Yeah, I'm starting a little early, primarily because I have just a few quick notes before we really get going. First of all, this is the final stream of 2022. I'll be back in January to pick things up. I'm just taking a couple weeks off for the holiday and family and recharge, and it's the worst time of year for me, like mentally. So, why did it do that again? It's not all right. I will take a look at why it keeps dating me on the wrong date. Anyway, this is the worst time of year for me mentally, so I'm taking a few weeks off of major streaming to recover. Just a few quick notes. Patreon content will conclude this coming Friday with the third Hobbit movie, and the podcast will be pretty much daily. It's done. It's booked and blocked and everything, with the exception of like holiday weekends. I'm taking a day off here and there. There'll be an announcement on the feed anytime I do that, but by and large, it's daily, no matter what. Blog content is done for 2022. It picks up again in 2023. Streams pick up in January. Newsletters pick up in January unless you're at the upper Patreon tiers, at which point you still have one or two more. The streaming specials for the upper Patreon tiers are also ongoing because they're done and scheduled out already. The bigger thing is overall that this should be nice. It'll be a nice little break. It'll give me a chance to roll out some new graphics. It'll give me a chance to work on a couple projects and lay things out for a strong start to 2023. I hope you're doing well. At the time I'm recording this, it's more or less the solstice, or I guess that happened an hour or so ago. I hope you're doing well. I hope your invocations and patrons and deals and all that go in the direction and in the way you want, because that's important, and you should get what you want from your patrons and assistants and things. All right, let's shall we get started? You want to do this? Let's do this.
All right, just remember what I've taught you.
The fuck is that?
Hey, yo.
Let's go while we're young.
All right. Hi. How are you? I hope you're doing well. I hope you're good. I hope you're enjoying your nearly final Wednesday of the year 2022. I'm doing okay. Things are present. I'm going, I guess. As I said before, this is the last stream of 2022. It's always hard to like say something like that, because the minute you say it's the last stream, no matter whatever else comes, people freak out. I'll be back in a couple weeks. It'll be fine. I'm just taking some days off. I lost my train of thought. The thing I want to tell you about is that no matter what, whether there's a stream or not a stream, you can always ask me questions. You can always write me an email, johnhelpsyouwritebetter@gmail.com. You can hit me on the Discord. You can leave a comment on any other writer's chat, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions anytime. But now, tonight, here, let's get started, shall we? Ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, non-binary pals, friends, writers, makers, doers, dreamers, planners, plotters, pacers, scribblers, storm enthusiasts, homebrew weather people, gamers, pantsers, photographers, cleaners, scrubbers, anybody who's ever had to just reach into the pantry to figure out what they're going to have for dinner? Tuna fish enthusiasts, hairstylists, anybody who says thank you, anybody who does better than just say, "Welp," with a hard P at the end when something doesn't go their way. Anybody who's contemplating a big life decision. Each and every single one of my friends, some, but not all of my family, and most importantly, the comrades. It is wonderful to be here, and I look forward to tonight. I look forward to this. This is going to be a good one. If you have no idea what this is, if this is totally new to you, this is the Writers' Chat for December the 21st. Yeah, I know. December the 21st, and I continue to be John, the guy who's going to help you write better. And if you're totally new, hi, first of all, welcome. It's nice to see you. And second of all, here's what this is. I'm going to answer 13 questions that I have collected from all across social media. People have sent in, people have asked, people have emailed, people have complained about on Twitter and Mastodon and all this stuff. And I'm gonna take a shot at it. If you out there have questions and you're watching this while this is on, feel free to use the chat function over there, and I'll answer your question on the fly. Otherwise, if you're watching this on YouTube, when's this going up? Tomorrow, the day after, Thursday, the 22nd. Leave your question down in the comments, and if you want, I'll answer you there. Otherwise, I'll answer you on a future chat. So, hi everybody! It's good to see you. It's nice to see you. We ready to get started? We ready to do this? We've got some really nice questions, a good mix of things that are going to make me spit some nickels, as my grandma used to say, but also some stuff that I think I can really make a difference. So I'm excited for this. Let's give this a shot, shall we? Question number 1. There are writers who often take a step back to figure out what to do. Does that affect or help me in any way? Okay, here's where this question comes from, because this question is not my typical kind of question. On Twitter, because it's still going on, there are loads of writers who regularly, hang on, my light made a flickery thing. That's a little ominous. There are tons of writers on Twitter who send a post or write a post about how, they just don't really know what to do. They're not getting the response, not getting the traction, the attention, the fill in the blank. They're not getting whatever they're expecting or needing or wanting. So they're thinking about quitting. They're thinking about, well, maybe I won't write for a while. Maybe that while is forever. Maybe that while is just a week. Who knows? But they pull back from writing. And there seem to be two camps of people who reply. One, people who offer sympathy, humans. And two, a segment of the writing population. Now, I don't know if this is specific to just the hashtag writing community on Twitter, but it certainly seems to be very much defined by the hashtag writing community on Twitter. A segment of that population is very vocal about them leaving. Fine, good, let them go, they say. Not, don't let the door hit you on the way out, that kind of thing. And it prompted somebody to ask this question because they themselves were taking a step back to figure out what to do. And does it affect you or help you? Kinda yes, kinda no. But not in the same reason you're probably thinking. What it does is it helps you find out that you failed. It helps me find out that I failed. It helps us all know that we suck. Why? Because here's a person who needed help. Now, maybe they framed this as needing attention. Maybe they framed this as needing 75 people to go buy a book on a Tuesday. Maybe they needed this as just somebody to really, golly gee, like their tweets. But it was somebody who needed something. It was a writer, a comrade, somebody who's a peer of ours, and they need help. And they maybe didn't express that need as clearly as they could, but they have that need. They expressed this sense of frustration, this sense of lack, this sense of miss, and we didn't do all we could at the time when we saw it to say something. We didn't offer encouragement. We didn't offer help. We didn't say, hey, try this. What about this? Do you want to vent, or do you want some support? Do you just want an answer? Do you just want to commiserate? What is it that you need so that you feel heard, seen, and validated? We didn't do any of that shit. We skipped it and left it to the jackals over there who will say something to the effect of, good, get out of here. Because from their point of view, when writers leave, it allows them to win. Now, I don't know what they're winning. Yeah, I'm making air quotes. But it seems like what you're doing is you're eliminating competition. If we just get rid of these people, well, then it'll be easier for us to succeed. The very large, significant problem with that is they're not competition. There's no competition. This isn't competition because we write books and they write books. And those people over there, they buy books. And they're not limited in just buying one. It's not like they have all these different books to choose from. They can only buy one at the grocery store. You can buy as many books as you want. That's why people have to-be-read lists. And this ever-growing sense that they have more books than they could ever read in a lifetime. You can always buy more books. The what's the word I want to use? Consumer pool. The amount of available customers is not finite, and it's not shrinking. People learn to read. People gain new books, access to new information all the time. So thinking that what we got to do is get rid of the dead weight is a horribly shitty attitude that helps no one and makes you look like an asshole. This should affect you. When people leave, when people walk away, it should affect you. It should be a moment for you to sit and go, okay, what can I do to help them? Do they just need some space? Is it just a matter of like, I'm going to leave them be? Or is there a real possible way for you to communicate more effectively and reach these people and help them? Because maybe you know the thing they want. Maybe they just want somebody to say hi. Maybe they don't want to feel so lonely on a Wednesday. Maybe they want, just some encouragement. Hey, keep going. I know it's really hard. I'm struggling there with you, but you're not alone. Maybe it's simply a matter of like, hey, I'll read your thing real quick. What do you need? It's an opportunity. And too many of us, especially in some writing communities more than others, too many of us let them slide by because we tell ourselves like, oh, well, I'm no expert. I'm just person over there. I'm just somebody like them. You're exactly who they need, though, because it's just people reaching people. Yes, I'm an expert. I'm only an expert because I spent my life doing this. But while that gives me certain facets and dimensions to what I say and do, I'm still a human. I can still engage with you in that, compassionate way, independent of my ability to go, hey, you got to fix your paragraphs. That's really important. And yeah, there are writers who will continue to take steps back and continue to figure out what to do. And some of that, at least the mentioning of it on social media, is highly performative. It's highly a matter of, I'm doing this so that I'm leaving, as if making a scene like that is one of the only ways they know how to get attention, because they have, for whatever reason, conflated attention with successful. Because if somebody's paying attention, then I must be doing something right. So in an effort to manage that, they make a big show of getting ready to leave and leaving, and it's one of those, I'm leaving now. No, now I'm really leaving. No, now I swear I'm really leaving, and they drag it out to some absurd length. If that's the case, then you can feel about those people how you feel about those people. But if you get the impression in the sense that it's sincere, that it's legitimately somebody like feeling like they're yelling at the bottom of the Grand Canyon hoping somebody hears them, you have an opportunity and a responsibility, I think, to be that person for them. You don't have to bear their emotional labor. You don't have to take on their problems. You don't even have to solve their problems. But you should hold space for them. You should give a shit. You should ask them and talk to them and see them, because everybody, no matter who they are, no matter what they're writing, no matter where they are on their journey, just wants to be seen and acknowledged and heard and loved. And every time somebody slams the door and walks away because they think nobody's out there, that's a missed opportunity for us. So that's what I think it's how it should affect you. And it does help you. It helps you to remember that these are people. They're not competition. They're not, competing factories or brands or whatever. They're just people. And they want the same things you want. And you have an opportunity to help them. So why aren't you helping them a little? Not even a few seconds? Really? You got time enough to play those inane little games like, what's your character's favorite cereal? Who gives a fucking shit? But you don't have 5 seconds to have a sincere moment of like, hey, how's your writing going? What do you need? What would help you succeed today? Because it's sure as shit not this inane question about your character's favorite cereal. What do you really need? I think if we all worked in a more compassionate way. We could elevate that discourse. We could bring it up. And I think that would pay huge dividends. I think that would make more communities more welcoming and more communities more successful. And I think it would push back a little, or at least bulwark against some of the nonsense. That's just what I think, though. Love to know what you think. Fire off a comment or two. Let me know. I'm going to move on to the next question. Question number 2. What role does research play for me if I'm writing fantasy? Oh, we're big sighing right away, John. Research is one of those things where writers make a hill and die on it. It is a big deal. It's a holy shit thing. And I don't know why. Because it's not like you're going to get a final exam on your novel. It's not like you're passing out quizzes to your readers. But research is one of those things where everybody swears they need to do it because they don't want the internet to yell at them for something. I don't know what the internet's going to yell at you for. It's possible the internet will yell at you a lot or a little. I have no idea. I don't even know if you should assume it's a given that they're going to. Your pessimism may be doing that for you, but I don't know if that's a rational idea to begin with. But at no point do you need to, no matter what you're writing, whether it's fantasy, science fiction, romance, whatever, at no point do you need to so hyper ground yourself in the facts and minutia and complexities and inner workings of something if it is not prominently featured in your writing. Here's an example. If you're writing a romance novel, let's say, before we tackle fantasy, if you're writing a romance novel and you want to mention that one of your characters is, they graduated from a particular university, just in an offhand way, in one paragraph, they mention, oh, I attended the University of, I don't know, the University of Arizona or the University of Michigan or something, because maybe the character pulls on a university sweatshirt or something. And it goes no further than that. The story doesn't take place on the campus. The story isn't about two people who went to school together and they're reconnecting. It doesn't have anything to do with college at all, other than this particular mention, other than, hey, my character's putting on this sweatshirt. You don't need to do research beyond like, how do humans put on sweatshirts? It doesn't matter if the particular university even sells sweatshirts, because it would not occur to a reader to give a shit about the sweatshirtness you've got going on. Some research writers do to escape the responsibility of being creative. They want to find and hunt down a stack of facts because they're trying to buffet themselves against what they perceive to be oncoming criticism. If I just know more things, if I just have these details at my disposal, then should somebody come at me, I don't know who that person is. I don't know what they're going to come at you for, but if they're coming at me, oh man, I'm going to be ready with these facts. I'm going to demonstrate to them that I'm good enough, because that's all this comes down to. Just being good enough, just being left the fuck alone so that you can produce and do whatever it is you want to do. Research is to aid the description and development of what you're doing. If you're creating a made-up fantasy kingdom, there's not really a whole lot of research you can do. If you want to say, oh, well, my kingdom is currently based on this actual real planet Earth historical thing, sure, some of those details could be helpful if they end up at length in detail in your manuscript. But if you are, in your fantasy world describing a longsword, beyond being able to describe the dimensions or the manufacturing process of a longsword, you probably don't need to get into the differences between, say, a Flemish blade and a Sicilian blade. Because unless it comes up in your story, no one's going to even think to wonder that. And the small segment of the internet population who has a very special interest in being shitty won't necessarily notice that you just have a long sword that's maybe an inch too short, or the pommel is the wrong shape, or that crossguard isn't quite a crossguard. Like, those details, yes, totally. If you want to research them, go research them. If it makes you happy and makes you, the author, feel like you're accomplishing something significant, even though you're not, that's not the point. But if it makes you feel better, Even though it doesn't show up in your manuscript, even though it doesn't help you figure out how to unfuck your plot, even if it doesn't help you figure out how to write a better mom character, even if it doesn't help you figure out the climax, if it brings you comfort to go look up all this dumb shit, go ahead. You are wasting your time because, again, no one's going to stop and ask about benign details. The details you bring up over and over when you're trying to put an image in the reader's head, the details that are central to your story because they're critical for your plot development or critical for the theme or the arc or whatever, those are the things that could be questioned. So we've gone from no one's going to stop to ask what kind of stone the cobblestones of your fantasy street are. But now we're starting to ask about like sewage and roofing and infrastructure in your city. And those are things that could come up if you spend a lot of time trying to detail the town or city or the peasantry in a certain way. That we've gone from they're not going to ask to, they could ask. In the presence of a could, if you could classify this detail as a maybe somebody somewhere could ask. Your responsibility is to not become a field expert on it. Your responsibility over the course of the whole manuscript is to be clear enough in what you mean so that the reader has a picture in their head. Not, and this is important, not clear enough that your reader, whomever they might be, sitting wherever they are, could write a doctoral dissertation on it. Not so that you could get fact-checked by some encyclopedia. Just so that you can clearly put a picture in the reader's head. The accuracy of that detail, the degree of slope on the roof, the amount of material it takes to thatch, the depth of the gutter, those details might be nice to know that, oh, I'm being historically accurate. Oh, what does that get you in the end other than potential frustration? What does that get you in the end other than a sense of, I'm trying to alleviate worry of a thing that might not be a thing? Research is nice, but research can also be a trap you lead yourself into because you're trying to just make your story okay. You know what makes your story okay? Writing the best scene you can, making sure there's a movie in the reader's head. Research is not a permission slip to skip those details. Research is not the solution to those details. The best details, the best way you can craft your story, whatever your story is not going to be found in studying 65 different examples of portraiture in art classes. It's going to come from you being able to describe what the character sees, not because you want to use the terminology correctly, but just because you want the reader to feel like they're in the room. Research is functional before anything else. And when the function is overtaken by the quantity, I know so many things, you guys. You've lost the thread. It falls apart. So when you're writing your fantasy, even though you're making stuff up, a little bit of research is something you can get a lot of mileage out of. You don't necessarily need to become, a master's level, accredited expert in feudal farming technique. You just need to be able to understand that it really sucks to be a serf. And the reader will be fine. The reader's not going out of their way to question things you don't bring up. And nor is the reader really sitting there going like, haha, I'm more of an expert than they are. I'm going to really, poke them like, oh, okay, that's a 1-star review in the making that I don't need to worry myself with. Now, there's a question in the comments that's really good. When you're world building, how deep is too deep? Hey, here's a fun fact. If you have to ask, chances are you've already gone too far. You've already gone deep enough because world building's there, the amount of world building, whether we're talking about the rules of societies or the depth and complexities on just how a social structure works. How deep that needs to be is just to resolve the issues or put the picture in the reader's head. You don't need to go like, okay, I've answered this question because this character is from this social group. So let's call them social group A. Just because A is one of 25 other social groups, I don't need to stop my story and then cover social group B, C, D, E, and F because right now I'm just talking to the character from group A. Does it help me? Is it nice to know that there exists 25 other things? I guess it's nice to know because it shows how creative you are. It shows how much detail you put into things. But if it never makes it into a manuscript and no one's ever going to know, who's it for? It is very easy, especially when world building, to go too deep too quickly because you want to show that complexity, you want to show that talent. But writing it down without giving it any utility, why do I get this detail? Why write this thing about the world here in this scene in this moment? Not that everything has to be brought up only to be used, but if you're going on at great length, and that's variable as to what great length is for every writer. But if you're going on and on at length about like the floor tile in the palace, like, am I going to care? Is that going to help me? Like, the palace is about to be besieged by the dragon. The palace is about to be no more in 5 chapters. Is it helping me to know that the floor tile is of a particular quarry? World building should facilitate character development and plot and theme, just the same way that plot should develop world building and character and theme. And they all braid together. We talked about the braid in the previous chat. We've talked about the story triangle several times. They're there in service of each other. They're there in they're there as utility belt tools. They're there. You reach in and you grab what you need to the amount you need at the time you need it. And anything else, that excess, that I'm going too far because you're not sure if the reader is going to engage, so I'll just keep adding more. That's when you know you've gone too deep. What an amazing question. Now, there's another comment. The first thing that made me aware of me was my comments on my friend's tweet asking how the writing was going. Yeah, I ask a lot of writers how the writing is going. It's surprising that I do not always get responses like it all. Even if I come in and I see somebody saying like, I don't understand how this works, I'll jump in and go, hi, I'm an industry professional. Here's how it works. I don't always do that expecting a thanks. I don't even do that expecting them to notice, because if there's like a stream and they're just venting, let them vent, whatever. I can't solve everybody's problem, but it's important to me, we'll say it this way, it's important to me that people know they're not alone doing the difficult stuff of creating. So if I can stand there and answer somebody's question, because it takes however many seconds to write a tweet or answer a question on Discord or a Patreon email or whatever, if I can do that and it's going to substantially help balance somebody or get somebody back on track, why not do that? It takes no time at all. Thanks for digging my supportive stuff. I like being supportive. Fun fact, I'm supportive. Follow up to the other question. So more Skyrim and less Tolkien. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. The stuff that serves, I got to move the camera, stuff that serves the story first, beyond the mythology, and then the cosmology after that. Yeah. Tolkien's nice, but that's not where the bar is set. You don't have to be Tolkien and then some, right? Like, so where's my camera? Like, Tolkien's the deep end or the upper end of the spectrum here. That's not the starting point. That's not the place you need to like be and then exceed. Like it's okay. You also don't have to like crawl the bottom of the sea floor either. There's a whole ass like between see Dick run Dick run, and let me give you the appendix of the Silmarillion. Like, there's a whole ass range, and anywhere in there is going to be just fine. Serve the story, add some stuff as needed, pepper it in when you want, but you're under no obligation to make sure the reader is a super expert in anything more than what happened in your story. This happened, this character did this character did that. Those are the things you definitely need. Those are the things you expect the reader to grasp and fathom over the course of the story. You're not going to hand your reader a quiz and go, okay, somewhere in this book, I mentioned the god of agriculture. What is their name for 5 points? That's not going to happen. Tolkien's up here. And I'm not saying like Tolkien's the best and you need to exceed it, because Tolkien's good in some cases and fine, but in other cases, Tolkien's too much. Every writer sets their own range. Don't get locked in. You're going to set where you want to be, and you can go up and you can go down and you can wobble and you can excel and you can decline, and that's all fine. Don't get lost in it. It's functional. Otherwise, it just takes up space and air. Don't overthink it. You're doing fine. Let's go to the next question, though. What does the change in galley and arc strategy / production mean for me trying to get traditionally published? Man, there are plenty of people out here trying to get me to chug a lot of tea real quick. Okay, So if you don't know what I'm talking about, early this week, late last week, there was a significant burbling in traditional publishing where Macmillan, some of the people on strike, Macmillan and then several other of the major publishers said they were going to stop doing physical ARC and physical galley. A galley is just a book that's been printed that hasn't been totally like clipped, cropped, and formatted. It's the pre-release physical manufacture. It's usually what gets sent out for big famous people to do press on or to do some early reviews. It's essentially a less formatted ARC. It still needs more polish. It's mainly just to see if the print was good, right? That's a galley. An ARC is a slightly more finalized version of the same thing. So Macmillan, a publisher, said, hey, we're not going to print so many physical books, physical ARCs, physical galleys, because it's expensive. We're not going to expend the money on this unless you're like a mainline story, a big deal that we're putting a lot of cash behind. And the reason they're doing that is a couple of reasons. One, it costs money and they don't want to spend money. That's always going to be job number one. Item number two, a lot of their books don't sell very well. A load of books are published. Like they'll have a lot of things under their umbrella. Hang on, mouthful of tea coming. A lot of things get accepted and a lot of things get published, but they don't all get the backing. They don't all get like the engine underneath them. And that's because the engine's only so big because they don't want to spend the money. And two, there's no support structure. Too many writers still in this day still spend so much time going, well, I'll be published. The publisher will handle all my marketing or really give my marketing a boost. And every time I hear that, I sink down a little in this chair and I feel a little older and I get a little angrier because that's some dumb shit. That's just flat out wrong. And holding on to this rigid, unyielding, old-fashioned idea is a lot like telling me that child labor is a great idea and let's bring that back. Or maybe we should all go back to burning coal. Or maybe women shouldn't vote. Like it's that level of outdated thinking. And it's wrong. And for some reason, none of these decisions seem to make people want to not publish traditionally. Like it doesn't wake them up. It doesn't, bring them to their senses that, oh, I'm dealing with a dinosaur here who doesn't like to spend money. Because this is not like a focus. They're going to frame it as like a focusing decision. If we like your book, that's what we'll do. Because they want to scare you because they're gatekeepers and they're all for scaring you. What this is a cost-cutting measure. We don't want to produce these pieces of material. We don't want to do this stuff because it costs money. We'll just go digital and save some money. It's cost cutting. I don't know what it's going to take to leverage more people out of the old-fashioned expectation that the only real, air quotes again, real publishing is to hold the physical book in your hand. I don't know what it's going to take to break people from that nostalgia and break people from that delusion that, we're not all at the end of the day reading more things on screens than we ever are in print anymore. No matter how nice it was, we don't have the same fascination with newspapers. Remember newspapers? They were a thing when I was growing up. They were a thing while I was in college. And what do we do now? Oh, I check the news over here on this device. But we don't get all like, oh shit, I love a newspaper. But we, for some reason, get all, oh shit, about a book. Why? It's just paper. That was paper. The important thing is that the thing's out in the world and somebody somewhere can consume it. Who cares? The change in galley and art production is a cost-cutting measure. What does it mean for you getting published traditionally? Other than, oh, please, God, take this as a sign that you should consider getting published in some other way? Or, oh, God, please don't put all your eggs in this basket? Shouldn't change you at all. I will, however, patiently, kindly remind you, hey, that's a basket. Do not put all your eggs in it. Cool? Cool. Now I know I'm going to say that and somebody somewhere is going to be like, but John, I totally, absolutely got to get published. Yes, you have every right to get published. But traditionally, come on. It's not the only game in town. Just because you think the game's not so hot, there are plenty of games in town. Don't put all your eggs in the basket. On we go. Questions from chat. And of course, What's the tea tonight? Tonight's tea is Holiday Passion Fruit from Tea Forte. It's fruity. Like, it's definitely got pineapple. It's got lemon. It's like a real tropical kind of thing going on. It's old. It's from 2 holiday seasons ago. It's nice. It's one of those, hey, I need to make some iced tea and like get it directly in my veins because I've been talking now for a couple hours. So yeah, let's do this. But it's very good. The better tea is coming. It's supposed to be here before the weekend. It'll probably be here tomorrow. That'll restock me in like my good Indian dark rich teas that, you know, seem a lot like coffee. Those are the teas I prefer. The ones that taste like earth and are black as night and are just extraordinary caffeine delivery systems. So yeah, we're plowing through the fruity stuff. Not my favorite, but I make do with what I got so that we can get back to the good shit. Great question. Are there any other questions from anybody in chat? It is so nice to see all of you, by the way. I think I said that before, but I want to make sure it is fantastic seeing you, especially some of you who I don't normally see here. So thanks for popping in. You guys are fucking amazing. Love you all. Questions? Else we will march on. There's some really good questions coming. Oh boy, howdy. Shall we keep moving? Hang on. Why is it not doing the thing? There we go. Question number 4. Hey, it's one of those good questions I talked about. Any tips for writing a character that identifies as a different gender than I do? Yeah. Everybody's a person. Okay? Now, the original context for this question came in where, you know, if you're writing male identifying characters, but you yourself are female identifying, and you're trying to capture a certain vibe because maybe these male identifying characters are like tough soldier types or something, that they have to be a certain way, that they have to be, I guess, macho and like rugged or stubbly or I don't know, something. Were there any tips for doing that? And there's an inherent binary in that question, which is why I'm reframing it as how do you write a character that identifies differently as you do? Because the binary's dumb. And if I sit down and go, yeah, you want to write a macho guy, you write a macho guy this way, because I don't want to feed the binary because the binary's bullshit. So what I want to say instead is that everybody's a person, no matter how they identify, no matter to what degree they identify in whatever gender persuasion or absence of gender they want. So everybody's a person, which means if you want to write a character that identifies differently than you in whatever way, shape, or form, in whatever persuasion, identity, denomination, whatever, what you want to find are the underlying similarities that connect you to this person. So that builds a baseline between the two of you. You are also insecure, and you also don't like riding in elevators with strangers, and you also worry about farting right before you have to do something important, and you often forget to floss. You know, you have similarities with this other human having another human experience. But then I want you to look for things that are different and divergent from your experience. You know, maybe you consider yourself particularly chatty. Maybe you're very talkative. You can't shut the fuck up. Whereas maybe this character, maybe this other person doesn't. Maybe they're not like that. Why aren't they like that? Well, maybe you want to explore that in your story, or maybe that's just a decision you make and it's not a big deal. The important thing here isn't that you take your character and say, my character is a tough soldier, so tough soldiers sound a certain way, because that's nonsense. Even if you're writing the most cliche factory that ever factoried from a cliche, not all soldiers are tough like that. Writing a macho story, even the most macho heteronormative dude, is still written with some, you know, female abstraction because you're trying to engage your audience. Cleaving so tightly to the idea of people present a certain way, and a certain kind of person who is a certain kind of job presents a certain kind of way, limits your ability to write because it doesn't challenge you. After a while, once you tick the boxes and go, well, they're macho and they have muscles and they're tough and they don't talk about their feelings. Okay, what else you got? Because that's a given and that's kind of really dull and boring. That's like 4 or 5 details. How many times can I bring that up before it starts getting a little farcical? What else? What else you got? How do they feel about babies? How do they feel about, home life? Have they ever thought about what to do with excess food? Would they help somebody on the street? If they found a wallet, would they turn it in? Like, there are so many more things to developing a character than just the initial limitations of singular identifying qualities. So if you're trying to write somebody who isn't you, find out the ways that you and they share common ground, where your Venn diagrams overlap, right? And then take bold risks out of your own comfort zone to figure out reasons and situations where they diverge from you. And then try to put those differences into words and then get somebody else to verify those differences. Because let's say you're, a middle-aged adult who's, grappling with all different kinds of stresses and responsibilities. And maybe you haven't wrestled with loneliness and depression, but you're trying to write somebody who is. So maybe you should go talk to somebody who's lonely and depressed to help you fill in those gaps and make sure that your depressed, lonely person sounds depressed and lonely and not some kind of caricature. Maybe. To summarize, don't nail your identities down to just cliches and job performances, because that's just bad writing. That's just flat out like doing you a disservice in developing your character. Gender identity, among all other identities, is fluid. It could change. You can have all different kinds of expressions to all different kinds of degrees, to all different kinds of things, even simultaneously. And none of that changes the fact that you're writing humans. Even when you're writing aliens, even when you're writing people from the 73rd dimension, because your readership is human, there's an expectation that you're looking for humanity in others. Find that humanity. And no matter their gender, you'll write a person somebody can connect to. Awesome question. There's a question in chat. Is it worth doing holiday? Is it worth doing holiday anthologies of short stories to bump up your backlist? That is a lot of work. Is it worth it? It depends on what we're evaluating worth to be. Like, if you have them already queued up and you're just trying to package it as a thing that maybe somebody will buy, if that's what you want to do, sure. But if you're just trying to say like, oh my God, I'm an author, I have to have a backlist. Why? Do you know what to do with a backlist? A backlist is there to give not only your reader an impression that you've written multiple things and they're available for sale, it's to provide a level of option. Hey, you don't only have to buy this one thing. I have other things. But beyond that, it's just a list of other stuff you did. Like, you can have a backlist. If you write down all the dinners you had in the last week, you've got a backlist of dinners. Does that do you any good? When we say worth, is it worth what? Worth your time? I don't know. Were you planning on selling the anthology? Is it worth your effort? I don't know. Would you be happy writing an anthology? Would you be happy preparing it? It's not a requirement. It's not like, oh my God, if you're not doing a backlist, you're not a real author. That's some horse shit. Like, that's not a thing. If it would make you happy, if it would give you a chance to produce something that you want to produce because you want to produce it, sure, it's totally worth it. But if you're doing it because you think it ticks some box or it's going to somehow encourage people to buy your other stuff because you have it, no, that's not how that works. Don't dive into because an anthology of any kind is a big ass product. Like, that takes time and effort. And if you're just doing it because, oh my God, it's the holiday, I need some sales. I want to remind you that from the time of recording, the holiday for some people is like 3 or 4 days away. It is unlikely that maybe you have stories already queued up. I don't know, but it is unlikely that the vast majority of people have done 95% of the work already to immediately just slap together an anthology and then stick a price tag on it. But again, if you want to do it and you think it'll accomplish some goal that you have, sure, do it. But don't think of it as this thing that needs be done because, oh my God, it's a backlist. Great, it's a backlist. Would you like my backlist of all the things I've watched this year for Patreon? Because I had to write it down because I wanted to make sure I wasn't repeating myself in 2023. Don't get caught up in jargon and expectation. If you want to do it, do it. Otherwise, it's not a hill to die on. We'll put it that way. On to the next question, though. Oh, bonus points if you answer gently. Here, have a harp. How do you get better at not asking too much of your readers or having them needing to decode every sentence? Oh boy. And I got to do it gently. All right. Come here. Right here with me. Okay. Here we go. All right. First of all, oh boy. How do I explain this one? You can't control what your reader does. That's going to be job number one. You have to stop because there's going to be it's not a worry that's helping you. It's not a thing that's making you a better, more effective writer. You are spending time spinning some wheels about a thing you have zero control or even zero knowledge of. Some readers, no matter what, are going to have to decode every sentence because they themselves are poorer readers. It takes them extra time for whatever reason. It takes them a few extra readings. They have to parse some language. They have to, that's on them. That's not your fault that they need help reading. It is not your job to facilitate anything other than you've provided them something to read. Because one of the inherent things packaged in the idea of decode every sentence and asking too much is that you have an expectation that writing should be done and therefore reading should be done at a certain level of sound, feel, quality, whatever you want to cage it as. So the idea is that it sounds to me like you're saying you as a human think that reading and writing should be at a certain level. You should sound a certain way. It should come across a certain way. Whether that meshes well with how you communicate in day-to-day life, that's up to you, or whether you think that writing should be different and distinct from hanging out and talking, or that certain kinds of writing need to sound a certain way. I am writing something old-fashioned, so it must sound old-timey, or whatever. Those kinds of constructions, that kind of architecture, right, is not helping you. Now, let's not swing the other way, though. This is not a matter of, oh my God, you have to write in what you think is the most patronizing or beneath you to some degree level. It's not like we don't only have the two options of see Dick run, Dick, run. Or the other option is, upon the morrow I do stand here upon the heath. I see my father wither there upon the height. Like, you don't have... It's not only those two things. If you are getting consistent feedback that you are asking too much of your readers in whatever way, there are probably two things at work just for that piece of feedback. One, your sentence construction and the way your tone and narrative voice or authorial voice are coming across to the reader is unduly, unnecessarily complex. You are aiming to reach a group of readers by using a style of expression that is not kind of meshing or syncing up with them. You're trying to sound very polished and very BBC received English when in fact you're talking to, a bunch of people from around the way. And, if you came to me and you sat down and we were just talking, I'm going to sound like this and you're going to sound how you sound. And all of a sudden, if in the middle of your sentence, for no intended reason, no joke, no gimmick or anything, you just began speaking like this all of a sudden, I'd be a little confused. And that's the sort of thing you're doing with your readership. The way you are trying to reach them is not meshing with them, either because you're aiming above them and going over their heads, meaning you're using language or construction that they have to decode, or it's vague in some way and you are asking too much of them either to be too literate or to understand more than they probably do, which tells me one of two things sort of sits at the heart of this. One, you're aiming for the wrong audience flat out. Like you're aiming for like wide appeal, but you don't write in a wide appeal accessible way. Now, that might mean you either have to kind of soften your language and soften your construction, or you got to aim for an upper end audience. Either's fine. The one's not better than the other, and you're not a bad person for needing to change if you want to change along those ways. Totally fine, okay? Needing to decode every sentence immediately screams complexity to me. Immediately. It's the length of sentence, it's the number of punctuation, it's the amount of punctuation, and it's how you're framing your ideas. Making it difficult to figure out what I'm supposed to get from a sentence does not help you retain a reader. If you bury the lead, if you drag out a backloaded sentence, if you do a lot of mid-loading, so the beginning and the end of your sentences kind of feel wonky, or the sentences are just unduly long because you're trying to be like a lot or do a lot, or you're trying to sound the way. What often happens with this is you read somebody else's work and it's, oh, this is fucking rad, I want to sound like this. And you try it and you grab some of the, you can get there, but you grab some of the wrong stuff along the way. You pick up some detritus and it bloats your writing. If you're getting this consistently, you've got to ask yourself a couple questions. One, how am I constructing my sentences? What is it that they need to decode? Is it, am I just using like language that's a little old-fashioned or a little archaic or a little clunky? Am I being vague? Am I not doing a good enough job clearly getting the picture out of my head onto the page? If I'm asking too much, is it too much what? Too much understanding? Again, that sounds to me like I'm not putting an effective picture in their head. If I'm asking them to do too much or guess too much or follow along, the too much of what? The of what is the critical thing here. You can get better at not doing that by, and I don't know how else to put this other than gently, you're in your head and it's not that big a deal. It's one thing to write in a way where you are purposefully flexing and purposefully showing, look at me, look, I went to school, I know how to write, I've won these awards, and I'm a very big deal. It's one thing if you're doing that just to be like, yeah, look, I'm doing it. What are you going to do about it, son? It's another thing if you're doing it because you're trying to win the approval and validation. Oh my God, I've got to be good enough. I'm going to write my fanciest. I'm going to write my best. Both of those things are inauthentic. Both of those things will lead to rejection because there is an inherent mismatch in how you are communicating. So I'm going to tell you this. Here's how you get better at not asking too much or breaking up the need for decoding. You need to be you. And if this is how you sound, and this is how you are most comfortable writing, without the anxiety, without the artifice, if you sit down and this is just how the story comes out of your head, cool. Then it's how the story comes out of your head. Get it into its best shape. Not the most polished, not the most erudite, not the most academic, not the most, super manufactured. Just clean it up. Make sure the modifiers are clear. Make sure nothing is dangling. Make sure your pronouns aren't super vague. Punctuate accordingly. That kind of shit. And then understand that you're aiming for a different audience than you're probably intending. Because if you are consistently being told that you're asking too much and and everybody's got to decode, there is something about how you are transmitting whatever you are transmitting. That's the problem. It's a style issue. I hope that helps. This is one of those things where I could point to an example and go, here's a thing. But in the absence of an example, all I can tell you is that there is a misalignment between how you are trying to sound and who you are trying to reach by sounding that way. As far as I know, this is just how I write. I don't feel I'm trying too hard. Well, first of all, nobody thinks they're trying too hard. But second of all, if this is just how you write, then that's how you write, and you need to aim for that audience who's a better fit for how you write. And it sounds to me that you're trying to reach down when you should be reaching up. And I don't mean down like they're bad and stupid. It's just that you're aiming for a group who's not your group. Everybody's got an audience somewhere. Everybody's got potential sales somewhere. And it's about lining up how you want to sound with what you want to say to get done what you want to get done. Okay? Great question. Have a harp. Would Gene Wolfe be a good example of needing to decode every sentence? Most of the wolves, Gene, Tom, Graham, although that's from 100 years ago, loads of different wolves, Virginia, are all examples about needing to decode things. Maybe it has something to do with the last name. I don't really know. But yeah, if you have to sit down and purposefully try to treat every sentence like an ogre, like an onion with layers, then at some point it stops being, hey, this is how I write. And it starts being, look how complex I can do a thing, you guys. And that's just showing off, which just to me screams again, oh my God, I just need someone to love and validate me, please. Okay, great question. Love that question. Been hyped to answer that question all day. Here's the next question. Oh my God, it's another great question. There's going to be another mouthful of tea coming. Question number 6. I'm an author who worries what social media backlash could be about what I'm writing. So I talk myself out of writing. What do I do? Whew. Okay, we're going to get a mouthful of tea on this one, you guys. Here we go. Okay. What this question's talking about is that they haven't done a thing, because if they do the thing, it's possible they could get a certain response, maybe. Okay? So we got a could and an if and a maybe all hanging out making a decision instead of the actual, like, do I want to do it at all? Anything you write, I don't care if it's a fucking grocery list, anything you write can be critiqued or backlashed by somebody somewhere. I have seen people give shitty reviews to pitches. I have given poor reviews to badly written things. I have seen people trash movies. I have trashed movies. Like, backlash could happen, but you can't control it. Remember we talked about in the last question, you can't control how the reader reads. You can't control how people respond. It's not your job to only produce things in whatever way only get you good feedback. Unless you are writing to such a small audience with a limited scope that, like, of course your mom's going to like your work. That's your mom. That kind of thing. If you're letting your anticipated worry of a backlash, first of all, a lot of the things people worry will have a backlash are not things that generate a backlash. Like, here's an example. Hey, I have 2 unmarried people kissing in this romance book. Yeah, it's a romance novel. There's no backlash. Could there somewhere be somebody who's like, oh no, wedlock? Yeah, I guess. But they're probably not going to buy the book. So who cares what they say? Also, second point, the amount of vanity it requires to assume that you, somebody who's never marketed fucking shit before in your life, with a readership measured in the ones of fingers, is going to suddenly be a thing that's going to generate social media backlash. Because we're making a distinction between, oh my God, everybody on the internet hates you, and somebody somewhere left you a 1-star review. We have to make that distinction. I'll talk about why in a second. The amount of ego it assumes that your book, writing your chapter, whatever it is, oh my God, there's a person of a different race or ethnicity. Okay. You're allowed to write that. Like, you don't have to, there's no lane you're supposed to be staying in other than the bullshit lane you erect for yourself because you're worried about response, so you limit yourself so that you don't have to upset and rock the boat. You can put whatever the fuck you want in your book. It's your book. It just depends on how clearly you get the movie in somebody's brain. But if you constantly talk yourself out of writing, no matter what it is we're talking about, my question to you, my counter question, if you will, before we talk about the other stuff, my counter question is, did you really want to write at all? Or did you just like making hay? You just like dealing with stuff? Because we're making that distinction between everybody on the internet hates you and you're canceled, because that's what people think cancel culture is. Or if this is just a matter of somebody somewhere didn't like me enough. Because that's going to happen all fucking day. Because that's the internet, man. Like, that's just how this shit is. People don't like me. Some of that I really care about. Some of that I deserve. Some of that I don't. But by and large, over the course of my day, I don't see them showing up here to help me around the house. I don't see them going with me to run errands. I don't see them with me when I'm at my low points or my high points. So I don't care because I can't control it. That's different than somebody being like, I didn't like this book. Cool. You didn't like that book. I didn't like a book. It didn't stop the author from writing another one, which I did like. If you're always talking yourself out of trying, how serious were you in the first place? That's always going to be my first question. My second question is, why are you afraid of backlash that you don't know is coming? It's one thing if you know, like, I am writing something incredibly, like, insensitive and aggressive and transgressive, and you know you're doing it and you're leaning in. If you're not intentionally right on that front line, right pushing that boundary, what are you worried about? Oh, man, they're going to come for me because I'm writing about a group of people from a culture I'm not a part of. Who? Whose opinion could be so critical to you that you couldn't address this by, getting a sensitivity reader or asking someone from that group of which you are writing and being like, hey, help me out here with this shit? Just because who you are, privileged as though you may be or not be, or to whatever degree you are or aren't, does not suddenly mean you are unable to write a thing. There's no prohibition like that. And the people who act and behave as though there are really just perpetuating a level of privilege because they have the luxury of being able to bitch, piss, and moan about this thing. It's a dumb thing to worry about. Like, there are some authors I know who don't have a social media presence because they can really just barely afford to own the software they use to write. And they don't have the time because they're single parents or they've got, stressful home situations. They don't have the luxury of being terminally online. That doesn't mean their writing isn't less valid than the person who's on Twitter 24/7, all up in the gossip chains. Like, so what do you do? Stop giving a shit about being online. You can write a book and sell a book and not be online. People do it all the fucking time. Really and truly. You can even self-publish and not be online other than, hey, there's my book. You can buy it over there. You can have a one-way online experience. You just tweet shit. Just send out a newsletter, write a couple tweets. Your tweets are all one way. You're not really intending to have big, heavy conversations. You're not looking to probe the depths of society. You're just fucking hitting books and putting them out. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't need to be, the octopus with its many tentacles and many, many pies. But if you're talking yourself out of writing because you're afraid of what somebody could say, you are in the wrong space in this field, man. Because this space is going to have people talk to you. This space is going to have interaction. You're not going to like all of it. They're not going to like all of what you do. You might find people who love it instead. You don't know until you try. That's why we do. But if you're that eager and ready to always talk yourself out, walk the fuck away. Because you're never going to get past that point unless you willfully make an effort to do so. That's what you should do. Next question. Are there any questions from anybody in chat while I put more liquid in my face? Questions? Everybody wants love and validation. Always, always, ever, 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 ever. Sometimes that love and validation takes many forms. But we're humans. We all want love and validation. When in doubt, creatively, provide it. Whether that validation is something as simple as, hey, I really liked your book. Or something like, I know exactly how hard it is. I've been where you've been. Give it. Takes 2 seconds. There's really no downside in validating somebody else's experience. Unless they're weird and creepy about it and all of a sudden you think you've made a new best friend. But that's a different story for a different day. Questions? Else we will move on. Question 7. Can you elaborate on how loops are used in building a narrative by using an example, maybe from a show or a book? If you're following the podcast, available everywhere you get podcasts, just search for John Helps You Write Better. I've been talking a lot about loops because loops are a great way of understanding story. So now we're going to go into some detail about loops. Buckle up. And we're going to use a movie I just watched because I just watched it for Patreon. We're going to use the second Hobbit movie, The Desolation of Smaug. Okay? We're going to use that movie because it's not good. And because it's 2 hours and 35 minutes or 2 hours and 36 minutes and 35 minutes are important and 2 hours aren't. Okay. Here are loops. Here's what a loop is. It is a set of events and a set of story elements. Sometimes they're events in sequence. Sometimes they're just shit that happens. Sometimes it's characters. They're story elements, and there's something connecting them. For instance, you have a loop of getting the dwarves to the Lonely Mountain. That's a loop. And then you have a loop of Bilbo dealing with the dragon. That's a loop. And all the things that fit under that category. So it's all the scenes with Bilbo and Smaug. It's all the scenes of the dwarves getting to the mountain. It's all the scenes of all the obstacles, prohibiting them from getting to the mountain. It's whatever you term that loop to be, those are what loops are. It's a set. It's a bunch of criteria. It's a bunch of stuff, okay? We can build a narrative out of these loops by looking at our story and saying, well, okay, so if we're talking about the loop for Bilbo and the dragon, we have to get Bilbo to the dragon, obviously. But once we're there, it's all the things that happen. It's the dialogue and the way he moves in the scene and how the dragon responds and where he's standing and how we describe the scene. And it's the pile of gold and it's the statements and it's the worry and it's the dragon's responses and it's how everybody moves. And then it's the dwarves. And it's the whole chain of not just the passage of time and not just the ticking of boxes on the event, it's everything in those moments. And it's not necessarily synchronous because the Bilbo Smaug loop also includes the last minute of the story where Smaug is flying over Lake Town and Bilbo's sitting there going, oh no, what have we done? Because that's part of the loop because it's part of the set of interactions that we labeled Bilbo versus Smaug. That's a loop. We build a narrative with the components of our loop because we want to make sure that all these story elements have some kind of connection with one another. So when we're talking about Bilbo versus Smaug as a loop, whether it's a subplot loop or a major plot loop or whatever, as a loop, we don't include things that don't fit Bilbo and Smaug. So when the dwarves get stuck in Lake Town with Stephen Fry, or they end up getting attacked by orcs and they're riding around in a log flume bucket ride, that's not part of Bilbo versus Smaug, even though those events have to happen in order to get to Bilbo versus Smaug. It's not directly related enough. A loop is more about just a chain of activities with a start point and an end point that in some way, shape, or form connect. So, for instance, the loop for Bilbo and Smaug start with Bilbo being told, hey, don't piss off the dragon, and if there is a dragon, be careful. And then the dragon getting away and being pissed off. That's our beginning and ending of our loop. They don't necessarily immediately resolve. It's called an unresolved loop. But they are related to each other. Don't piss off the dragon. Dragon pissed off. Those two elements are related. That connects our loop. The point of a loop is just to connect information, to make things feel tied together, cohesive. The loop for, let's do the loop for the dwarves, right? So if we're doing the dwarves and we do it broad enough, like all the shit the dwarves do in the story, well, they deal with the elves, they go on the log flume ride, they fight some orcs, they reach the mountain, they get frustrated, they walk away, they end up in Lake Town. I'm doing this out of order because I'm trying to remember the movie in my head. But all those different things fall under the category of the loop for dwarves. If we get more specific and we say, anytime the dwarves demonstrate agency, our loop's pretty small, because throughout the second Hobbit movie, whenever there's a problem, somebody else comes and solves it for the dwarves. Whether it's Legolas or Tauriel or the orcs themselves at one point, or Gandalf or the fucking weather or something, there's always, or nearly always, somebody showing up doing it for them, robbing them of agency. So our loop for do the dwarves have agency is limited to all the instances where they don't, so that we can conclude, hey, they don't have any agency. The function of a loop is to tie information together. We build that narrative by looking at, well, here's my story. This happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. A, B, C, D. What connections can we draw for ABCD, for ABC, for BCD, for CD, for ACD, for, when we take all our pieces, can we plug them not necessarily out of the manuscript and not necessarily out of order, but how can we connect these dots in more than sequential ways to help us tell what the narrative is and what works and what doesn't, so that if we have to, delete the section of the story where all of a sudden they're dealing with Stephen Fry in Lake Town, because it contributes zero to the story, we know we can do that because it doesn't fit into any of our loops beyond the loop of Stephen Fry's in this movie, you guys. It's a single loop of like 3 scenes, and it accomplishes nothing. And if we were to take it out, the story doesn't radically change, because that part of the story is about Bard. If we're looking at a different kind of loop, we can go talk about, let's say, Andor, which is something I'm covering for the upper end of the Patreon, which, by the way, is patreon.com/JohnHelpsYouWriteBetter. Those loops, because it's a 12-episode season, are pretty much broken into 3 or 4 episodes apiece. The piece we're in right now is the back half, so it's the prison section. All the prison stuff is a loop because it's all related with prison stuff. Within that prison loop, there is a single loop for Andy Serkis's character, as he goes from a guy who, goes along to get along because he's got his sentence, to realizing that, oh my God, what I thought is not true, and I have to change how I am behaving. I'm trying to do this without spoilers. Because he undergoes a radical transformation of character, that's a loop. And all those activities that start him off at his character point and show him changing and then show him resolving, which is pretty much over the course of 2 episodes, but it's really fucking impactful, that's a loop. Loops can be any size. They just need to be a number of story elements. The function of loops are to better organize information. It's to get you away from thinking about just linear strings of note cards. Item 1, item 2, item 3. Now we have loops. Now we have other shapes. Now we bring in more complicated geometries to interweave our stories more and interweave our stories in more ways. That's what I was trying to go for. I hope that helps. If it doesn't help, let me know, and I will deep dive on them at some point. Maybe we'll grab a Wednesday and we'll just talk about loops. We should probably do that. Where's my notepad? Hang on. Let's do that. Let's plan to do that in 2023, okay? I'm going to make myself a note. Loops. Maybe my graphic will do some roller coasters, but we'll do loops in 2023, okay? On with the next question, though. Oh my God, a timed question? Yeah, I'm really doing this right now. Can I just put it on the screen here? Let's see. I bet I can. Hang on a minute. Oh my God. There it is. All right, hang on. Let me. All right. Stop it. All right. We're going to reset that in a second. Just like that. Okay. 60 seconds on the clock. What's one thing you want to tell a writer who's about to finish their 3rd draft and consider publication? Ready? We're starting the clock. Okay, so you're about to finish your 3rd draft. First of all, congratulations on almost finishing your 3rd draft. I hope you finish your 3rd draft. Next thing I want to tell you to do is one professional thing and one personal thing. Professional thing first, we're going to get that out of the way. I need you to get an editor. Because if you're considering publication of any kind, you're going to need it edited. I don't care what bullshit social media has told you. I don't care what you think you remember reading. No matter what, whether you're traditionally publishing or self-publishing, you're going to need an editor. Get a good one. Get a good developmental editor. Second thing, personal thing. Please don't limit yourself to one mode of publication. Don't say it's all traditional publishing or bust. Don't say it's got to be with a certain company. Consider that your goal, your point in your job is to get your story out into as many hands as possible. Please don't limit that because you have some kind of unreasonable expectation about how it's supposed to be. Look at that. With a second or two left on the clock, that's what I would tell you if you're thinking about publishing and finishing your third draft. What an awesome question. Let's go. Next one. I'm at a point in my story where I feel where I'm so familiar with everything that it feels uninteresting and not worth writing. You've reached the point in a draft where you hate the draft. That is a completely normal milestone. What can I do to push through and keep writing? Well, step one, you've already recognized that, hey, there's a thing. You're going to need to push through and keep writing. That resistance you're facing in terms of the writing feeling familiar is expectation. You are starting to detach from your thing emotionally and you're starting to see it objectively and you're not quite there yet. The jello has not fully gelled, if we can use a food metaphor. Pushing through and keeping writing means bringing yourself forward in the story, getting to the next thing that does excite you. Now, if this is a case where you've been treading water and spinning your wheels because, oh my God, the second act won't end, something like that, hey, guess what? It's time to end the act and move forward. Take us to the next action beat. Take us to the next emotional spur in the story. Kick us forward. Kick us in the ass. Keep us moving and reading. That's assuming, however, this isn't a case of you're just bored with writing. If you're bored with writing, take a break. Take a break. I don't know how long, but take a break. If, however, this is a case of, oh my God, I feel like this has been going on too long and I want it to feel fresh and exciting, well, congratulations. You're pushing past that part where you were only previously fueled by passion and you are now moving into that place where you are synthesizing passion and talent to move you forward into production. Keep your focus on your goal. What is it you want to do next? What's the next milestone? Not just, I want to publish, because that's way down the road. What's the next immediate goal? What's the next mile marker? What's the next big hurdle? I want to finish this paragraph. I want to finish this scene. I want to get to the climax. I want to get to this kind of scene. I want to get to the action beat. What's that milestone? How far are you away from it? What's keeping you from getting there the next time you sit down to write, whether that's tomorrow or next week or whatever? Get to that action beat. Get to that milestone. Take a deep breath, throw yourself fully and completely into it. And over time, not because you rewrite it and tinker with it and try to make it perfect, but over time, you will synthesize that combination of, it's only really fun to be a writer in the beginning, with that combination of, it's only really fun with, I like doing this because I like doing it. What I worry about, what I stress over, is the idea that it feels like it's not worth writing. It's always worth writing. If you're worried that it's not worth writing because you're bored and you've been in your head and you've had it in your head so long, I need you to think about the person who's never seen it before, who's never pictured it the way you have, and remind yourself that your responsibility is to get your picture as best you can in their head. See it from their side of the street, whatever that might be. You're doing this for them, aren't you? I would chew on that question, and then I'd go back and keep writing. On we go. Are there any questions from anybody in chat? I'm still powering through a cup of tea. I have a whole thermos of water, too. We will probably need it. We're in the home stretch. Any questions, though, from anybody in chat? I will say again, this is the final chat for 2022. I'll be back in 2023. Here's a question. Is it still a good idea for aspiring authors to write reviews of books that are in a subgenre they want to write in? I've seen people say that an author leaving less than a positive review is tantamount to sabotaging their competition. Thoughts. Oh boy, howdy. I got some thoughts. Here we go. First of all, an aspiring author is an author who does not write. Aspiring means you want to. If you are writing, don't get hung up. If it's the difference between being published and aspiring. If you're just not published, you're an author who's not published. Cool. If you want to write reviews of books in whatever genre, subgenre, whatever, because you want to leave reviews for the book because you dug the book, write reviews. Go to town. Writing reviews for the stuff you liked is good. Writing reviews for the stuff that you really didn't like, as long as you're not an asshole about it, is good. Because, hey, you should inform people. Say what's up. Learning how to write and decode and, parse reviews is an important skill for you with your own stuff. You want to write and craft the kind of review that you would find helpful or that you would find, positive. If you're writing a positive review, what would you like to hear from somebody? Not just, oh my God, it was so good. You'd want to have a review that highlights the good things. I really love the way this is characterized. I really love the plot, the twist. I totally, didn't see it coming. Leave the kind of review that you would want to receive. If you're going to say like, oh, this thing sucks, it was really bad, don't just say, oh, it sucks, 1 star. What didn't work? What was the problem? In your estimation, no one's asking you to be academic. No one's asking you to put on your writing coach hat and, come up with, oh, I think the construction of the story architecture was blah, 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 blah. No one was asking that. You're a reader. Treat it like a reader. Now, we're going to address the second half of your thing. An author leaving a less than positive review is tantamount to sabotaging their competition. Okay, if you're leaving a less than positive review somewhere, it better be because you thought that book was less than positive. If you were just review bombing to review bomb, hey man, you can go find another stream. That's not cool. Don't do that. Don't be a jerk on purpose. The world's full of that. We need to be better than that. Next thing, sabotaging their competition. There isn't any competition. There's no competition. You're not competing. Readers are not a scarce resource, right? It's not like all of a sudden readers can only buy one book and they're going to buy your book or their book to the exclusion of somebody else. I know readers who buy fuck tons of books. They're not competition. The algorithm doesn't do that. We do that because we demand hierarchy thanks to capitalism. You're not competing. There's no competition. If you leave shitty reviews on purpose because I don't like that person, I don't like that they made the Star Wars the gay or something, and you're just doing it because I don't like the political agenda of the libs or whatever nonsense, don't do that either. That's pretty shitty. But you're under no compulsion to leave reviews. It's not like, well, it's 5 o'clock. I better clock into my review job. No. Review the stuff you liked. Talk about why you liked it. Review the stuff that didn't click with you. Talk about why it didn't click with you. At the distinction that, well, you're supposed to leave reviews because you're an author. No, you're supposed to leave reviews because you were a consumer of the product. Because you should talk about what you liked and what you didn't like, independent of your authorial status. It is not tantamount to sabotaging competition because nobody's competing. You get to write, I get to write, she gets to write, they get to write, we all get to write. I'm not competing with you. I'm here to help you. He's not competing with you. He's going to do the same thing you're doing. You're just doing it in 2 different ways. Shift that focus towards I, the consumer, want to help this author keep going. Either improve, rally, do whatever. I'm trying to connect with them as reader to writer. Whether or not they're going to repay the favor, you have no idea. You can't control that. But you, as a consumer of their media, have a responsibility and an opportunity to say that this book left an impression one way or the other. Do that. And that's enough. Everything else is horseshit propagated by social media. It's more important that as a consumer, not even to feed the algorithm, because fuck the algorithm. It's as a consumer, this book moved me. You should know about it. As a writer, you want to encourage and foster that same kind of thing with your people, your community, your group. To do that, you do more than just say, I wrote a review here, because that's nice. I had lunch the other day. What you want to do is make sure you remind people, hey, when you're leaving reviews, Make them functional, make them useful. What kind of review would you like to get? That's the kind of review you should leave. Turn it into an opportunity to lift others. You're under no obligation beyond that. I think you've got a responsibility as a human being to be a human being with other human beings, but that's me. You get to do you. That's the nice thing about being human beings. What an amazing, excellent question. Thank you so much for asking it. Any others? Else we will march on. That is a really great question. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Question 10. What are the pros and cons of planning an entire publishing schedule for 2023? Okay. The biggest pro is organization. It gives you a set idea of when things are going to happen, when things need to happen, and by extension, when you need to do shit. So if you know that you want to publish at X date, you know that you need to be done prior to X date. And it can help you organize your time. It can also, let's say you're making a publishing schedule for your blog. It'll help you to know that, like, you can look at your calendar and go, okay, let's say you write every Friday, right? Mapping out 52 Fridays can be a great way of organizing. Like, I want to take a couple of weeks and talk about this thing in depth, in pieces, right? I'm going to spend 4 weeks talking about this topic, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, whatever it is. You can do that. It helps you organize your ideas. It gives you a sense of structure in what could be an otherwise structureless, vague thing. It can eliminate that sense of like, oh my God, I don't know what to write, because you've got this schedule of organized ideas to potentially fall back on. It also helps eliminate really long stretches of inactivity, because with a calendar, with a schedule, you've always got something to do. You're never going to be sitting there going, oh, what do I do today? You'll know you've got this schedule. However, the same pro is also the same con, because it's about to be January and you're really telling me that you're locking in July now so that the third week of July, you know what you'll want to blog? What if, what if you change your mind? How flexible can you be? I'm not saying leave it blank, because who knows what's going to happen in March that's going to affect July, but maybe you don't want to nail down everything. Maybe you want to, instead of doing an entire publishing schedule for the entire year, maybe you want to do, a short-term thing. Maybe you want to map out just January or January and February and see where it goes. Maybe you just want to do like the next week, depending on what we're talking about. Big major corporations plan their entire schedule. At this point now, they're planning for 2025. Everything else has been decided, because they have commitments to honor. They have money to try not to spend. They have, gates to keep and hoops to make people jump through. So they're planning a long game. You don't have to follow in their shoes. They're going to try and encourage you to, because that's how they gatekeep, and that's how they keep you down, comrade. But the most significant pro is organization. The most significant con is that organization turns into limitation pretty goddamn quickly. I have tried in the past to map out, I used to, pre-podcast, I blogged every day. It was a lot. And I would map out 30 days of blog posts. Now, it takes me about 2 hours to write a blog post, because I run at the mouth. Maybe you've noticed. So it's 2 hours of writing, but it's also like 25 minutes of me like psyching myself up in the morning to sit down and write, make sure I have breakfast, make sure I'm undisturbed, put my headphones on, and go write. I can shave some of that time down, but it's always 2 hours. And there's no prep beforehand. If I know on Monday I'm writing about A and on Tuesday I'm writing about B, at the end of Monday's blog post, I don't immediately start researching for A, because I have other shit to do. So I was always like ahead of the curve by a day or two, but I was always worried, like, oh God, I said on Thursday I was going to talk about the benefits of such and such and so. I guess I better think about some benefits for such and such and so. And it got exhausting. And I felt limited. So instead of like looking at this calendar going, oh my God, every day I have to write, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to pay my bills, I decided I was just going to sit down and do a podcast, talking to this microphone or talking to like my headphones or something. And that's a lot easier for me. and my topics are essentially unlimited. Right now I'm doing an audio version of Fiyoshimo. It's pretty fucking rad. But I don't have to map out. If you were to ask me like, hey, John, what are you doing, in 2 weeks when I'm out of Fiyoshio topics? I don't know. I'll figure it out then. I will sit down and see where the wind takes me. Now, is that because I'm sitting from some place of great arrogance? Like, haha, I'll figure it out. No, it's because I just plain don't know. Like today I dropped a bonus episode about accessibility in publishing because some products came out and it really got me thinking. So I just threw that in there. I want that flexibility. Maybe you want something more structured. Maybe you want something more organized because you're tired of spinning your wheels, and you, unlike me, don't deal well with the wide openness of potential. And that's fine if that's the case. But it's about organization and limitation and structure. Just don't get overly rigid with it. Great question. Question 11. What was a bad book marketing trend in 2022? Okay, hold your horses. We're going to use bad in my criteria. We're going to use bad in my opinion. You may think this thing was awesome, and that's fine. And if you dug it, that's great. Good for you. You are not wrong. You are not a bad human for digging this. I am coming at this from a two-prong approach. First prong, I think it looked ugly. And second, it didn't actually do the job you were intending it to do. Here's what I mean. The bad book marketing trend I want to talk about is a single one graphic where like a digital Kindle template is used and then like the cover is put in here. And then there's like a fuck ton of arrows where it like lists the contents like male protagonist, female love interest. It has a dragon, necromancy, love story with cinnamon buns. And it has all these different pieces and all these different arrows. That's a bad habit. That's a bad construction. That's a bad trend. That's an overly popular thing that doesn't do the thing it's trying to do. Why, John? It just tells us what's in the book. Telling us what's in the book is not marketing the book. What that does when you just say it has a love story with cinnamon buns and necromancy, it's relying on the reader's expectation and ideas and concepts of love story with cinnamon buns and necromancy in order to make us curious about the thing. Because if I just grab you the ingredient list of something, or I start reading the back blurb off a book on my list here, like that doesn't make you read the story. It doesn't suddenly make it sound, appealing. Because I'm counting on your pre-knowledge. And if you have no interest in a love story with cinnamon buns, even if I think that's just a cool, fun thing I'm mentioning, I've now put you off the book. The same way if I talk about like, it's got, thirsty lesbians. If that phrase presses a button for you, even if I'm not portraying the cliche of thirsty lesbianism, I've put you off. Detailing book contents is not marketing in the same way that me reading the ingredients off my shampoo bottle doesn't extol the virtues of my shampoo. You need to do more than just list its contents. And this whole like center your cover and then draw your arrows, that's nice, but it's also lazy. And it's not the only way to do it. And you need to do more than that because that's not a pitch. It's not engaging or evocative. It's just a list. You might as well just, again, take a picture of that, side column in your cereal box and go, oh, it has raisins. It must be a nice, yes, it has raisins. Good for you. That's a bad trend. That's what makes it a bad trend. And the fact that I literally just watched when I looked over at my phone, I literally watched some new stuff pop up, and holy shit, there's 3 more authors doing it. Okay, on we go to the next one. Do better. Craft more than one way. Have multiple tools in your toolbox. Marketing isn't just about detailing one thing. It's about engaging and evoking a sense of potential. It's about telling us what's in the story and why it should matter and making me care about it and making me think. That's more effective marketing. All right, on we go. Question 12. What's the difference between a newsletter and a mailer? This one's pretty straightforward. A newsletter is a newsletter. It is a diverse piece of singular information sent to you to lay out or schedule or organize or build hype or accomplish some task. It's a call to action. It's instructional. It's manipulative. It's salesy. It's whatever. It usually there, especially now, it's digital. They are primarily text-based. Lots of text, maybe some images, but primarily they're text first. Links, all that stuff, everything's determined by text. They are generally considered story-focused pieces of information because you're either trying to tell a story or imply a story by selling something. That's a newsletter. Loads of people have them. I have one. If you want it, it's johnhelpsyouwritebetter.com. Newsletter. They're delightful. A mailer... First of all, a mailer is an archaic term. It usually refers to the physical stuff we get mailed. Now, it would most often refer to like junk mail when you think about it in its physical contents. Those are those big cardboard rectangles for like funeral homes and lawn services, that kind of thing. Those are mailers. A mailer is generally a graphic first as opposed to text first newsletter. It lays out like, here's my new book cover. Here's here's the series thing. Here's the website's front page. Here's the big image from the swag you can get. Here's the demo picture of the new merch I'm selling. Because it's graphic first more than text first, it is arguably a mailer. It can still be digital. Although depending on your age bracket of your receiver, I hear mailer. Now I'm in my 40s. I hear mailer, I think junk mail. But mailer in the digital age of communication refers to just a graphic first rather than text first newsletter. A newsletter is just a text first newsletter. Mailer is a subset of it. That's the primary difference. Yes, you can have a newsletter that is sometimes a mailer. You can have I've done it before, where you have your newsletter where you just throw some graphics up. Hey, here's the new shit. I'll see you next week, because that's all you have. Sometimes it's a newsletter, and if you're a newsletter that includes graphics because you want to just like throw a graphic in the middle to break up your text, it's still a newsletter. It's not like it's all one or all the other. They're just different tools in the toolbox for reaching your people. Okay? Great question. Let's wrap this thing up because I see it's been like an hour and 30-something minutes. 13th question, the final question of 2022. Woo, here we go. Why are writer resolutions a terrible idea? The same way that all New Year's resolutions are a terrible idea. They don't set you up to succeed. A resolution, whether it's I'm going to write every day, or I'm going to publish a book this year, or I want to write more like this famous author. That's nice. That's great. Good for you. I would also like to be 4 inches taller. I'd like to have enough money every month to pay my bills. I'd like to not have to wait in line at food banks. I'd like to have more socks. I'd like to like a lot of things. That's, maybe we could all have more butts. I like things. Let's have a resolution for that stuff. A resolution without an actionable plan, a resolution without a reasonable strategy for accomplishment is masturbatory. It's performative. It's what you tell or say or do or bring up to other people so that they go, oh, wow, look at that, in some effort to gain that validation we talked about earlier. Resolutions don't get done. Work gets done. Effort gets done. A resolution that becomes this vague thing because it's too lofty. I'm gonna write my book this year. Okay, cool. How you gonna do it? You gonna get it done soon? You're gonna write like every day, not accounting for life and other shit. When you set the goal really high and there's no plan underneath it to support it, like, oh my God, I'm gonna accomplish this big thing. Without a plan underneath it, it doesn't matter if you do or don't. You're putting the focus in the wrong way. You're aiming at the wrong goal. You don't want to live in this space of, I'm going to do this thing that's going to be huge and have nothing underneath it to make it possible. You're just wasting your time. I'm going to write a book that changes the way people understand fantasy novels. Uh-huh. Okay. I'm also going to make cookies this year. And I'm pretty sure this is the year my cat's going to start speaking French. Without anything underneath it, I'm just spouting off at the mouth. Because the inherent question should be, how are you going to do that? Not, oh, that sounds great. How are you going to do it? The how matters. It speaks to your organization. It speaks to your intent. It speaks to your seriousness. The vast number of people who make writing resolutions don't follow through because they're not fucking serious, but they want other people to tell them they're doing a good job. So let me tell you this. You're doing a good job. Now, how are you going to do the things you want to do? Whatever they are. One step at a time. Small steps over big steps with some medium-sized steps thrown in there. You have this goal. You need a plan. Without a plan, your goal is this abstract thing. And that disappointment when you don't meet that goal, because you didn't have a plan, can be crushing. And then you'll feel really guilty. But this is a fixable problem. You just need a plan. So set your goal and then have a plan. But to talk in these airy, artsy terms of, here's my resolutions. If you don't turn them into practical application, I might as well just read you limericks. What's your plan? Plans beat resolutions every time, every single time. Given the choice between somebody who's making big resolutions and somebody with a plan, give me 5 writers with plans and I'll show you 5 writers who I can take from here to there and get done. The resolution people, watch them spin their wheels. And if you're a resolution person, I'm not calling you out. I'm not saying like, okay, prove me wrong. It'd be nice if that's your vibe, if that's what you want to do. But I'm disinterested in playing that game because I'm old now. What I want to do is turn around and say, okay, there's your resolution. Great. How are you going to do it? Can I help? Do you need a hand? Do you want to break down some smaller steps? How can we make this more actionable for you? I want to see you succeed. Most of the time, resolutions don't bake in the success. They bake in the praise and the reward, but they don't bake in the path. And I want you to think about the path. I want you to figure out how you're going to get there because I want to make it easier for you. Not necessarily faster, but at least easier. Get you around some of the obstacles. Resolutions don't give a shit about that, and I want you to give a shit about that. And that's why writer resolutions are a terrible idea and why I don't do them and why usually at the end of the year, I talk more about plans and trends and organizing because those are more concrete things that we can turn and look ahead to the next year and figure out what we're supposed to do. Make sense? Are there any other questions before we head out the door? Oh, man. Questions, issues, comments, etc. Else we will go to the outro. Again, a reminder, I'll be back in January. There is no chat next week. Questions, though? Anybody? Anything? New people? Hi. I hope you were welcomed by the existing people. I hope you come back for more in January. If you liked this, if you dug this, and you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the button for notifications and do all the YouTube-y things. In part because they make me giggle when I think about the fact that I have to say that, and in part because they are genuinely helpful tools that let me know, like, oh, shit, I'm doing something right. But right now, I want to know if you have any questions. If not, we'll go to the outro, and then we'll do some housekeeping, and then we'll get out of here. Coolsville? Coolsville. Let's hit that outro. All right. We made it through 2022. Well, we're on our way to making it through 2022. This was a wonderful chat. This made me super happy. I love doing this. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I really, really appreciate it. You made my day. You saved my life, as you do every week. It's a pleasure. Now, the next time I'm here, in your ears and on your screens and in your face, will be January, let's be generous, and say January the 18th. Prior to that, I will be available in podcast form. Search for John Helps You Write Better wherever you get podcasts. And Patreon, patreon.com/John Helps You Write Better. But beyond that, the streams will be off for a few weeks while I get some other shit done, including but not limited to some digital products and some blogging and some other stuff. And also just like, a break because I've been going at a pretty good clip and I could use a rest. So until we talk next, until I see you again, Take care of yourselves. All power to all people. Be kind and good. You deserve it. I love you. You're worth caring about. I see you. I see how hard you're working. And I believe in you. And if you ever want help getting from point A to point B and figuring out where point C is, all you got to do is go to johnhelpsyouwritebetter.com. I'd be more than happy to help you. Or find me on social media. I'm in all different kinds of places. In 2023, there's a graphic that says more about where I'm at. And until then, johnhelpsyouwritebetter.com is the best place to find me. You can send me an email at johnhelpsyouwritebetter@gmail.com. Until then, until next time, be good. I love you. We'll talk soon. See ya!